greatest privilege. My greatest privilege at the moment, I think, is where I'm living at. State of Montana. This is probably the safest area I've ever lived in my life in Missoula, Montana. And growing up like in and around, you know, Pennsylvania, like outside of Philly, around Jersey, outside of like cities like Trenton and Camden. Um, I have never lived in a less crime like ridden like area than I do right now. And so like the kind of place where like you can legitimately like leave like the keys in the ignition of your car, no one's gonna take it. You can leave your house unlocked, no one's ever gonna come in. You can drop your wallet in a grocery store, someone will track you down and give it back to you. So privilege is living in this part of the country because this is the kind of stuff that I thought would only exist in like Disney movies, but it actually is real and I'm living in it.
That's great. I only ever experienced that when I went to go visit Utah, and my friend, we drove to his house and he put his keys on the dash and we're getting ready to get out the car. And I'm like, you're going to need your keys.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, we just like leave our keys on the dash and it'll be here when I get back.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a trip because,
the city girl and me panicked like the whole time we were in the house. I was just like, it's crazy.
It's crazy because like I remember being a kid. We had I never lived like in Philly. I always lived like just like a few minutes outside of it. But like I had a lot of family who lived in West Philly. Mm-hmm. I remember going into West Philly to pick up my grandma, and we had to go take her to Temple Hospital. And I remember going in the hospital like one day. I think I was like 10, 11 years old. We ended up coming back outside like like an hour or two later, and our minivan was sitting on bricks. Like someone had stolen our tires in broad daylight outside of this hospital. And I don't know, like now I think that that's crazy, but at the time I was just like, we should have parked in a better spot. Like that was the mentality I had. I was just like, oh, we set ourselves up by parking in this alleyway. Like we should have parked somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, I guess thinking about stuff like that and thinking about just like other examples I had in the past, I'm just like, okay, like where I live at right now, like it's crazy that like nothing bad happens here. I mean, occasionally, but not really. Like crime around here consists of like DUIs. And you know what I'm saying? Like nothing like nothing real.
Like it's too cold to commit any real crimes. Like it's just it's too cold where you are. That the northern states it's just way too cold for me. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Take a Taste Podcast. I am your host, Leah. I am here with Desmond from Independent Thought Podcast. I met him maybe a few weeks back just through our friend in the podcast, Lynette from Nice to Meet You podcast. And I'll just say this. Listening to your podcast makes me appreciative that people actually still do research.
It's not like a lot of research, but I do some.
But even going past just watching Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, your Stephen Colbert's, the guy with the voice, what's his name? Shapiro. Listening to these people who are giving you slants or like a summary so you won't have to do as much work. But even in doing the research that you do for your episodes, I appreciate it. I just appreciate it. Like as a debater, I appreciate that you come to the table with like, look, this is the information that has been put out, unbiasedly read both sides. And even, because I read the right side, I read the left side, I read what really happened. And so these are the facts that we have of the case.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely try to keep that in mind. I think one of the things that has really shaped how I think about politics is that, is like living in the state that I live in now. And so, like it kind of goes without saying, if you have listened to my podcast, you can tell I'm definitely more of a left-leaning person. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter in the primaries. I I try to like keep bias out of as much as I can, but that's impossible to do. Like you can never be 100%, unbiased. I don't think that's
Right.
even like remotely a thing. But I always try to think about my episodes in the sense that like I want to be fair to the conservative objections that I might hear from what I'm going to say, because I live in a state where it's a red state. There's a lot of conservatives here in Montana. There's also a lot of liberals here as well. So like people in my state are constantly having to interact with each other. People who probably differ wildly in like political beliefs. So I'm always thinking to myself like, how can I make this conversation fair to both sides? How
Right.
can I be fair to both sides as far as like the affirmative and like what they're both doing wrong? And so I try to like keep those things in perspective as much as I can, but it's never perfect.
No, but I think that it definitely humanizes you, where you have a sense of, look, this is where my moral compass is, and this is what I see as what would be the better thing to do. Not necessarily that it is the right thing always,
Yeah.
because right is kind of subjective, right?
Yes.
Where it's like, well, this is the right thing for me at this time, but 10 days from now, an hour from now, your life could completely change, and that may not be the right thing for you anymore. And so I just like that, listening to your podcast, I get to have like this cool one-sided conversation, because I can't really talk back to you. But I get to have like this cool conversation where it's not just a Trevor Noah take, or a
Right.
take from, not to knock any of the other people who are doing research and reporting back the facts of what happened. But I definitely do
Right.
think that when you're in mainstream media, you
You have
have
to
a
be on one
slant
side.
that you have to report on.
Yeah.
There are people who are just like, we love the conservatives, we love the Republicans. They're the right way, they're the only way. So you're either like a Christian conservative, or you're just like this godless liberal who wants anarchy, and the right wants order while the left wants chaos.
Yeah.
And it's and life is never black and white. Like there's not a where it's an all or nothing thing.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, not only that, I mean, like I feel like as a person who is, skeptical of both parties, it allows me to see the hypocrisy in both.
Hmm.
And I also feel like when I'm trying to reach people, I feel like it's important to call out, nonsense wherever you see it. I feel like it kind of gives you credibility with people. Like where I'm not feeling like I'm trying to just target one group, like, oh, the Republicans, they do this, 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 and this. It's like, no, I'll take my shots at the Democrats too, because like I feel like if you're being honest with yourself, like truly being honest with yourself, you can't look at politics and say to yourself that one side is just and one side is unjust. Like
Right.
there's no way to like critically look at it and see it from that point of view if you're being honest with yourself.
I have been aware, like growing up, that I potentially could be treated differently
Yeah.
because of my skin tone,
Yeah.
because of who I am, because of how I wear my hair. And now that I have locks, I am like hyper aware that, it's presentation, no matter what it is. I could be dressed up and ready to go to an interview or going to work or whatever, and still be seen as a potential threat just because of the way I look.
Yeah.
And it's not even like, oh, her shoes are dirty, or she's like looks slovenly dressed or whatever. She could potentially be stealing, or whatever the case may be. Like,
Hmm.
because my skin apparently is a criminal characteristic. I just, it's unfortunate that that's how some people process, being in contact with people who look like us. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I just, the boldness that people have to just say whatever comes to their mind, because they believe it, like you said, they believe it like it's Santa Claus. Like they truly believe that
It's okay to talk that way.
oh yeah, and
Yeah.
I would just have to accept it.
Yeah. I don't know. I think one of the good things that came from living in that area was I mean, people, aren't afraid to be direct where I grew up at. And so I've never been afraid to stand up for myself, but I think that also comes from the privilege of just being probably like a male,
Yeah.
so I'm not afraid to get in somebody's face. I'm not afraid to, punch somebody. Like, I mean, I don't know. I guess like I have that advantage. I think that, like I'm sure like people who are smaller, like women in general, I mean, who probably don't feel like they have the ability to stand up for themselves, because they're like afraid or whatever the case may be. Like I've always been very confrontational when I felt like someone was treating me the wrong way. Like I'll
Mhm.
just get right in their face about it. I'm like, is there a reason you're talking to me that way? And just kind of like just putting them on blast really quick and just seeing how they react to that and just seeing how bold they really want to get. Because I think as I've gotten older, I have less and less patience for that. Like if I even smell like someone like acting the wrong way around me, like I will not be afraid to just like get right in their face about it. I'm too old for that stuff now.
Is that a personality trait or is that a practice?
Honestly, I really feel like it's a culture thing because I really feel like that is like a Philadelphia, like Jersey thing, because I feel like that was a learned behavior that I got growing up.
Okay.
Just like just being in that area, because like my family's that way, my friends are that way. Like that is just that area. That's like a fighter's mentality that you just have like growing up in that neighborhood. Like you have to be aggressive because if you're not, then someone will be aggressive with you to your detriment. Like you got to be able to like defend yourself verbally and physically sometimes. So I mean, it's just one of those things that you just pick up growing up in an area like that.
So you've always have to your family has pretty much trained you to be at the ready at all
You know
times.
what? Yeah, I mean, like it's not like you're looking for it, but it's a defense mechanism. Like if someone comes at you the wrong way, you be ready to defend yourself, whether that means like verbally or physically. Like you're always ready. Like don't let somebody treat you a way that you shouldn't be treated. Just
Right.
like period. Like
Right.
if you know that person's out of line, you let them know they're out of line.
And so and I think that does kind of like come from male privilege because if I were to act that way,
Yeah,
I think that I would be considered so many things. There's so many words that I would be called, just because oh, she's the kinder words would be abrasive or aggressive or
yeah,
confrontational. There are some more not so savory words that will go in there as well, but that's just because even if I take on the traits of a sense of entitlement. Yeah, I belong here. Yes, I am this person. Yes, I have this education.
yeah.
Yes, I have this job. Yes, I have this type of money, or I make this, or I do this, or whatever. And it's like, no, 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 you shouldn't be acting like that. You're fill in the blank with whatever this is. And I think I get that a lot, because I am more confrontational. If you say something to me and I don't like it, and I
Yeah.
let you know, regardless of how nice I am about letting you know, like, hey, watch yourself. It's like then I'm being considered, this rude person.
I think that's also cultural at the same time, though, because that's one of the things I've noticed as I've left the Northeast was that is, I think, that is like a stigma that is placed on women. I feel like as I've left the Northeast, but when I was back home, like, I mean, the traits I'm telling you about right now, I didn't learn that from my dad. I picked it up from my mom. My mom is the most like strong-willed woman I've ever met in my life. And so are my aunts, my grandmother. I mean, like I was raised around strong women. My mom was not afraid to put any man in her place who ever talked to her the wrong way. So I
Yeah.
mean, I mean that maybe that's just my family, but I mean a lot of women that I knew like when I was growing up, I mean not just in my family, but like it was always just like it was like the direct thing didn't apply to like a gender where I grew up at. But I've noticed that as I've left, it kind of has, like in other parts of the country. Does that make
Oh, on the
sense?
West Coast, definitely. Like
Yeah.
that is, I constantly be more ladylike, talk more softly, like
Yeah.
constantly. West Coast, definitely. Because, I think that on the East Coast, I've seen where there's like a lot of women who are more vocal, who have more attitude, who have more this, who have more that. But it's just that they want to make it known you're not going to get over on them. They know how to protect themselves. They know how to
Hmm.
stand their ground. They know how to take care of themselves. And you
Yeah,
just treat them any kind of way. And
exactly.
people are just like, well, you should say it nicer, or you shouldn't expect this, or take what you can get, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I think that, like, by the time that gets to the West Coast, it's like, no, you need to act more like this, or do this or whatever.
Yeah, no, I can understand how that could be different across cultures because I know for a fact that like just growing up, I mean, I never heard the term like lady like really growing up where I grew up at in Pennsylvania. Like it just wasn't a thing. It really
Mhm.
wasn't. I mean, maybe I just lived in a nice pocket that Philadelphia Jersey pocket. But yeah, it wasn't a part of my culture growing up.
I think it's more of a I think the people on the West Coast who probably said that most often are people who have family that came from the South. Because I think
That
I
makes
think that's
sense.
very much a Southern thing. Because as I have moved toward the East Coast, I hear that even now. I hear that a lot more from being in the South than I have like anywhere else.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Actually, I had a work from home job like about like a year ago, and my boss, he's in Kentucky, and I had done a podcast with my girlfriend, and he like listened to one of our episodes, and my girlfriend, like, like she curses as much as I do, and so like we curse on the podcast and stuff like that. But I remember he listened to the episode, then like afterwards he like talked to me, and he was like, "Oh, your girlfriend has a mouth on her," and I just like stopped dead in my tracks, and I was like, "What does that mean? What do you mean she has a mouth on her?
Yeah.
Like what? Like what?" It took me a second. Then I had to like ask him about like what he was even talking about. He was just like, "Oh, like she just like she talks like a man does," and I was like, I had to like just drop the conversation because I just never heard anyone even say that in my life. So, but then again, like I said earlier, I've never spent any time in the South, so that's like a culture that like I don't
Hmm.
understand, so which, as far as that's concerned, I'm glad I don't understand that. So
That is wild, because as soon as he said that, I knew exactly what he meant.
yeah,
And at that point, you have never
nope,
experienced or even heard that.
no.
Like, that is wild.
So
But
that's yeah, so I guess that's another like illustration though, like the culture difference is like just the North and the South. It's just like yeah, in my whole life, like not even living out here in Montana, I've never heard that. So like I've never heard a
wild.
man, talk about a woman that way. Like, oh, she has a
Oh,
mouth
it's
on
very
her.
much, because there's always like this, sit there and look pretty kind of thing,
Yeah,
where it's women. And that's why when women are like, wanting to fight for women's rights to be great and do all these things, um, or even, have a right to choose, or have a right to their own bodies, or a right to, make the same amount, or a right to whatever, right?
yeah,
Um, that you still have people like, because your previous manager is not, by himself. There are people, especially people in power,
yeah,
who believe that women shouldn't, like it, and you can tell this in audience. If you listen to any news media outlet, you will hear it, because the way they report on Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, Bernie Sanders, um, Beto O'Rourke, very different than when they report on Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton. It's more like, even after the Pence Harris debate, she seemed more warm. She was this. How she like, but if you listen to the way they talk about Pence, it's more about his arguments. It's more about what he said. And so I think that having this mentality, especially be prevalent, in these states that can decide, okay, who's going to be our next administrator, who's going to be the next administration we're going to follow, or whatever, for the next 4 years, it makes it hard, when people don't see like this is what we have to do. I think that it's very interesting that you say that those characteristics are not gender based in your world. That's not where you come from.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I feel like I think like you can break things down into subgroups. So I feel like they are gender based, but I feel like they're gender based in certain cultures. You know what I
Right.
mean? So I feel
But
like
I'm just talking about like where you come from.
right where I come from, they're not gender based.
Right. But I
Yeah,
think that everywhere else people try to put them in a gender role. So like a woman is supposed to be softer and soft
right.
spoken and seen but not heard, and it's very childlike, very patronizing. But a man is supposed to be this brutish, whatever, masculine individual who can,
Yeah.
who knows how to give, an extemporaneous speech, but also can fight you in the parking lot if need be.
Yeah, and you know what? It's one of those things
Like,
where like as over the years, as I was like, like I live in a mostly white state, right? Like
mhm,
as of right now. And so I remember like as the years have gone on, I've had to have conversations with people about like race and all that kind of stuff. I'd also have these conversations with women about like sexism. And there were things that like I never noticed in the media before. Like my radar wasn't up, like I wasn't looking for it. And like over the last like couple of years now, I think like I've gotten to the point now where I'm not like looking for it, but I notice it more now when those like words trigger. And I know exactly what you're talking about because I was watching, and this is one of the things that I do for my podcast a lot. I try to watch like CNN and Fox News like after a debate to kind of hear how both sides are kind of like slanting the story.
right.
And I happened to be on Fox when I was like watching the end of the vice presidential debate. I forget who exactly it was, but one of the people who they were asking the opinions of were like, "Oh yeah, well, Kamala Harris kind of, I don't know that she really came off as likable as she wanted to tonight." And I
Yeah.
was like, "How is that? How does that a metric of how we're thinking about a vice presidential candidate? She wasn't as
It's
likable. Like
just
this
as a
vice does
woman.
Mike Pence care about being likable? Does anyone like him?" I mean, so when I heard that, it was like one of the first times where like it kind of just like shot off my brain. I was like, that's what people are always talking about.
Yeah.
You're like, how does that matter?
Yeah.
She wasn't likable enough. Like, okay, okay, okay.
No, because even in debate where I'm gonna make this very short. Even in debate where there's a lot of discrimination,
Yeah,
it's gotten better. But when you have women who are more when they're more assertive in their speech because they do know what they're talking about, a lot of times guys will vote them down because they're not ladylike, and it's just like, but
oof.
did you hear the arguments she was making though? Like, how does she get low speak points? I don't understand. And
Yeah, no, I
it's
don't get it.
but it's the frustration of like, and I kind of want to get your opinion on this because you say your mom is a very strong woman and you grew up around a lot
Yes,
of strong women.
yes.
What do you think about the narrative of the strong Black woman?
I don't know because I hear that people saying like, black women, like they can't be too angry, they can't be too forceful, like they can't be this, they can't be that. But I don't. I mean, I got to keep it fair for a second. Like when I left that area, like I was in high school, so I didn't get
Mhm.
to experience it as an adult, right? So
Okay.
I'm telling it to you from like a child and a teenager's eyes. Like of course I've been back a lot as an adult, but like they're just visits, like
Right.
I don't live there anymore.
Okay.
So I know what my family tells me, and I know what I've seen in the occasional times I've lived there, but it's not like an everyday perspective. But
Right.
like just from my personal experience, like maybe again, maybe it's just the part of the country I'm in, but like I don't see it like the way that I've heard other people talk about it. I'm
Mm.
saying that I don't believe it. I just
Mhm.
haven't witnessed it personally. And like I do feel like, I mean, like, my family, they've experienced plenty of racism, they've experienced plenty of, like sexism. Um, so I mean, I just I don't know exactly how different it would be for them than it is for women in different parts of the country. The one thing that I will say is that I feel as though, black women are definitely, taken advantage of in our society in several different ways. But I I'm just thankful that I just, I grew up in a really just like in a strong family that just isn't afraid to stand up for themselves, because there's just too many people trying to take advantage of people out there.
That's really true. I it's one of the other podcasters brought up this idea of like racial fatigue and all of these things, but I think there's a few layers to that where we get so caught up in the competition.
Yeah.
So Black Lives Matter happened. Then we had the LGBTQAI plus rights, right? We had women's rights on top of that. And we had people of color, indigenous people rights, and and all of that. We have different countries of Africa going up in flames right now. With the fights that they have going on there against their government. They're how is it that you can stay sane, not even positive, just stay sane, like knowing all of the fires that are burning at the same time, to know how to forge ahead or to keep moving forward?
Um, I'm gonna try to think of a more sophisticated way to say this, because my simple answer was that because it's getting better, which I know sounds is a terrible answer. Let me break that down more. Back, when our grandparents were our age,
Mhm.
50s, 60s. I mean, you got to think about the environment that they were living in, with racism being like dramatically more overt than it is now, being a lot more severe than it is now. The laws, I mean, Jim Crow laws were still enacted. This was before integration, before the Civil Rights Act. People were being hosed down in the streets, and white people laughed about it. I remember the town that I grew up in the 50s and the 60s, like when the first black people moved into that neighborhood, they were constantly like under like they had to have like bring the FBI in there to protect them, because people were like surrounding their houses and throwing bricks through their windows, trying to light their houses on fire. I mean, and they persevered because they believed that things could get better. And they didn't have the benefit that we have right now, which not only is the time that's gone by and the advances that we've made, but the internet. And the internet is, I feel like, a great equalizer, which is going to continue to help all these movements move forward.
Mhm.
Because now we all see all the people around the country and around the world who are also as pissed off as we are, whereas before we felt more isolated. But
Right.
now we realize how much community there actually is, and we can consistently point out when these things happen where they used to fall, in the cracks because no one would see them. It was just hearsay before. Now there's video evidence. Now there's, people documenting it. Now people are organizing around these things when they're happening and getting together and putting agendas forward and getting people elected in local elections to stop these policies from happening. I mean, the atrocities over in Africa, like they've been happening for, I mean, decades,
Yes.
centuries have been happening over in Africa. But like now, people in America are talking about it for the first time ever. Why? Because people are actually connected to the internet over in Africa. They're able to share their stories, and now people here can actually like raise awareness about them. And so I feel like as time moves forward, things will continue to get better. It's hard to imagine that right now because things are so bad, but if you're able to look at it from a bigger perspective, you'll realize that like as messed up as things have been in society for people of color, it has gotten better as has gone on. As long as people don't quit, it will continue to get better.
I think that is so true. And, you know, I think people in general get tired of there always being a fire to put out, but they
Yes.
don't feel like they have the ability to tap out now. It's like, no, 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 you need to get your rest. We need to get the next group in rotation. And I thought that it was, even though like things were tough, like terribly tough. Like it was good Lord. It got to the point where it was just like, how can we even keep going? Like, let the world burn. Like we just got to let it burn. Just like let it burn. Let us deal with whatever the issues are, so that we can like actually move forward. We can reconcile with the past and all these things. And actually, the glimmer of hope that I had came when I saw kind of mirrored of what happened in the 60s, where we had the Chicano movement, the Black Panther Party actually team up, where they were just like, they supported each other in their movements. You know what I mean? Where we see in today, where we had people from all backgrounds, and like so many, I didn't know this many white people cared. I like honestly did not know this many white people cared. But like what really like sparked hope was when I saw the Maori people actually doing a haka in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
Was it New Zealand? I think was it Australia? New Zealand. I'm pretty sure it was New Zealand, but it was the Maori people, Maori people doing a haka, and I was just like, what?
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
What?
I mean, not
Like
only that, but like there was protests for George Floyd's death in over 60 countries around the
all
world,
around the world. Like I
in
was just
every
like,
continent.
this is wow. Like this bringing this much awareness and then causing change. And I think that one thing that hopefully people understand is that change is,
Gradual.
yes, it's very incremental. Like because you can have really big change, but then it kind of like goes away. But if you have consistent incremental change, then you may not see the exact thing you want in 3 days. But when you look back 3 years from now, it'll be very different from when it first started.
And it is. And honestly, it's already different now than when I was in like high school. I mean, just not even that long ago. I mean, things are progressing the right way. It's just that it feels like it's too slow. But, I feel like if people are fair to themselves, which, it's probably the next thing I'm about to say is probably not something that anyone wants to hear, but, you know, there's still going to be a lot of issues with racism when we die. You
I,
know?
I I don't think it's gonna be. I don't think racism is gonna be eradicated. I don't, because there has to be. There's I okay, because because I meet so many people all the time who think racism doesn't exist, right?
Right.
And so because there are still, even people who are racist knows that racism exists because it's what they truly believe in, whether it's white supremacists, neo-Nazis, they know it.
Right.
But the hardest sell is to have someone talk about a solution to a problem they don't think exists.
Like climate change.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
science.
Yeah. So you're not wrong. I I just I try to think about these things as being realistic.
Yeah,
My grandfather, passed a few years ago in 2011. So it was like 9 years ago. And he was in his 70s when he passed. His entire life he had to experience racism, but from the moment that he was born to when he died, they were very different Americas.
yeah,
And I feel like from where I'm at now to where I eventually pass, like racism will probably still exist, but we'll probably also be in a very different America. And
yeah,
so it's one of those things where it's like if you don't want to fight because you're afraid that you can't win completely, then you're never going to really like, I don't think you're ever going to really accomplish anything in life. Because
No,
if
I don't
you're,
think so.
yeah, I mean, you have to understand that you're going to have to, that there's going to be incremental change over time. I mean, we're not going to get to a place where we're just going to like click our fingers one day and then the racism's gone. It's going to be a
Right.
general, just like breaking down, just like over time. But that means just consistent pressure, you
Right.
know? And so the goal is to leave the society better for the next generation and hope that they'll pick up the torch because that's what we were asked to do,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. And
We
I
were
think
asked to pick up the torch from the last generation. Like they're done fighting now. It's time for us to fight.
right. And I even though there's like this you know, apathy that is starting to take root
Yeah.
and really develop, unfortunately, in some of the hearts and minds of some of the people who are able to make a change, because change is not something, you know, just voting in one election is not going to be change.
No.
But like you said, what you teach the next generation, what you teach the people in your community, whether you have kids or not, you know, leaving an impact of like, look, the world could be better if we had this thing. Let me teach this thing to you, and maybe you can teach someone else.
Yeah. And, you know, that's, you know, I didn't love everything about the, you know, the years that President Obama was president, but I gotta say, I don't think anyone's ever delivered better, like, I guess, like messages as far as like why you should care are concerned. I was actually just watching him rally for Joe Biden in Philly just, I think it was just yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. But he was almost echoing the exact same sentiment that like you can't just get involved in one election and expect everything in your life to get better. It's like you
Right,
have to
right,
stay involved in the process because like things will get better over time as long as we stay engaged. You know, like we need to just keep pumping out little bits of change until you look up and 20 years later you have a lot of change.
right. And
You know?
I think that, you know, having people, because it's not about, I don't think that it's necessarily about the messenger. It's about the message that they're trying to get forward. I mean, unless
Yes.
your messenger is just like super corrupt and never tells the truth, and you know, has been impeached and, you know, found to be guilty of multiple felonies, you know, whatever. But you're
I already did my episode on him, so I'll save my speech.
but
Um,
I think that, you know, listening to the message of people who, especially people who, I think it's hard to argue empathy for me, but that's because I have practiced, I've been taught, and I practice putting myself in the shoes of other people. But I
right,
think that we have become so egocentric that we, instead of having, earlier you mentioned conversations that you would have with other people where they would say, and you do this on your podcast, well, my opinion is XYZ. These are the facts. This is what I got from it, but this is my opinion. You know, maybe you think differently. And I feel that in college towns or places similar to those where you have multiple cultures, people are more open to having those styles of conversation
right,
where it's like, well, you know, I feel that ladylike looks however a woman wants to present herself.
right.
And some people are like, no, ladylike looks
Like
like
this.
this. Like this is how ladylike should look, you know?
Yeah,
And I think that with the internet, we have gotten, if only slightly, a bit better with understanding that there are people who do things differently, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong.
yes,
It's just different.
right.
And it works for them. And it's not that, but nobody's telling you, hey, like one of the biggest things I think that we talk about in culture clash, like the difference is like a very small argument that you have when you first move in with someone is, you know, do you put open ketchup in the refrigerator or in the pantry?
That's not a conversation.
It's not.
That is not a conversation. I'm sorry.
Where do you put your ketchup?
It's gotta be in the fridge.
Yeah,
It's
some
gotta be.
some
It's
people put
gotta
it
be
in
in
the
the fridge.
pantry because they'll say they don't want cold ketchup, cold mustard on their hot dog, like when it's already warm. They don't want
We can't
cold
be friends.
condiments on their warm food. And I'm just like,
We can't be
okay,
friends.
you can have your own ketchup in the pantry. Mine stays in the refrigerator because it says to put in the refrigerator. Like some people put their hot sauce has to be in the refrigerator. Other people put it in the pantry.
See, I'm
So
the opposite way. My hot sauce goes in the pantry.
my hot sauce is in the cabinet too. It's like
Yeah.
right
So
on the stove.
yeah.
But yeah, but I mean, it's with it being, different. I think that, the internet is allowing people to see, just like I didn't know how many people actually let their cats sit in their dishes on the counter in the
What?
kitchen. Yeah. Kev on stage, he's a comedian. I'm gonna send you a link to his video. Twitter has a whole feed of multiple feeds of people letting their cats sit in like the mixing bowl. Or like, yeah. I'm telling and they think it's normal. They just like, oh, it's normal. Or people who eat off their spoon and let their dog lick the rest of the peanut butter off the spoon and then they
I
put
mean,
it back in the container.
I've seen that before.
Yeah.
I'm not that person. I mean,
yeah, but
I don't know.
I mean, I am my dog doesn't even get on furniture. He stays in the house, but he's not on furniture or anything. And so I think that, but it's like I said, it's like this culture thing. But I think that people are wild people, like people who, do you wash chicken with water or do you use like lime and vinegar? People are open to having more conversations about the differences in the way they live without saying that, well, what you're doing is wrong. Like the way I play dominoes, some people might say the way I do it is wrong. And so
yeah, I don't know. I guess it's interesting when it comes to like these I guess you call them like they're just like
the trivial things.
Yeah, the trivial things. I'm just like, I'm okay with that level of discrimination. I'm okay with that. I think these lighter subjects, I'm just like, oh, okay, you don't like that person because they only eat like, Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce or whatever. Like, yeah, you could not like that person. I understand. So I don't know. Like, yeah, these levels I'm okay with. Yeah, when it gets to the more serious stuff, like that's the kind of stuff where I'm just like, I can't deal with those people. And it's the strangest thing is, I've talked a lot about growing up in like Montana and like in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I can't have political conversations with people I know in Pennsylvania. I can't do it because in that culture, it's very much like I'm right, you're wrong, no matter what your belief is.
Yeah.
And versus out here, I can talk to a person who I know is a Trump supporter and has no view that I have, and we will have the most civilized conversation in the world. I can't do that with somebody who even is also like, who also votes like Democrat, like I tend to do. I can't do that with somebody in the East because we might not see the Democratic Party the same way because I think that they're corrupt and they don't believe that. And they're willing to not give a single inch of ground on the subject to the point where I'm like, I can't have a conversation with you.
I don't like having conversations with those type of people because
I can't do it. I just can't do it.
If you come to the conversation, because this is the way I see conversation. It should be an open exchange of ideas.
Yes.
That's what a conversation should be. To me,
Yeah.
that's the point of a conversation.
Right.
But if we are in conversation and you create a hill out of everything that you are willing to die on each one of those hills.
Yeah.
Like regardless if you have new information, regardless if you're still working off of information because your grandmother told you this one thing one time, so you believe it to the end of your days, regardless of any new information that you get. You're the type of person who I do not wish to converse with, period. Not even standing in a train station. Like, no, I have no reason to talk to you because it makes it very difficult. It's more frustrating than anything because I try to be more open to understanding where a person is coming from. But
Right.
that energy is not reciprocated,
Exactly. Yeah.
it kind of defeats the purpose of having a conversation to begin with.
It really does. And, I'm making myself sound really old now, but like, in my old age now, I've put a new premium on energy. Like I am a firm believer in what I use my energy for and what I'm putting my energy towards. And I feel like if I am wasting my time with something, I will just immediately stop it. Because I'm just like, if I'm in a conversation with somebody and I feel like it's going absolutely nowhere, there's no part of me that's like, maybe I can reach this person. I'm like, nope, I'm done. I'm done.
Some
Okay.
people have this savior. I don't need to save you, honey bunches.
Yeah.
Listen, you go about. You've made it this far in life. Okay, I have not been sitting here to save you. Okay, I am just some random person you happen to be talking to,
Yeah.
and I choose not to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, I'm very selective with energy at this point. So I'm like, if I care about you as a person, I'll spend my energy on you. If
Mhm.
I don't care about you or I just met you, like I just don't know you yet, you know what I'm saying? Then I am not going to waste my time trying to like get you to see things from a different perspective. I'm just like,
Right,
it's just not worth it.
right.
Like either I don't like you or I don't know you. I mean, if I don't know you, maybe you're a good person. I just don't know you. But so like at that point in time, I'm just like, I don't know this person. I'm not here to help them. They are who they are. I'm out of here.
Um, Thank you so much, Desmond. I appreciate you sitting and talking with me. Can you tell the people where they can find you?
Yeah. So again, my name is Desmond Price. The podcast is called the Independent Thought Podcast. You can find me on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on occasionally on YouTube. My presence there isn't filled out as much as it needs to be, but that'll get there eventually. Follow me on Instagram, also at Independent Thought. I do have a Twitter, but you can skip over that. It's nothing that special. But yes, Instagram is the place to find me. Feel free to DM me if you are ever interested in anything I talk about on my show. Definitely an open platform, so feel free to message me if you have any questions or comments about any episodes you've listened to.
Oh, thank you. Make sure you follow us at Take Up Space Podcast. Take Up Space Pod is Take Up Space POD on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And definitely appreciate you listening in. Make sure you go and follow Desmond. I thank you so much for coming on the show. And we will see you next week. We will be going live on Thursday to talk a little bit more about this episode. And I hope to see you there. We are live on Facebook and Facebook and YouTube. I apologize. We're live on Facebook and YouTube at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So we hope to see you there. Thank you so much again. And y'all have a great one.